got Mon Mac here. I'm here with Micah Weeks from Coast H.A.N.D.S. Welcome.
Thank you. Proud to be here. Awesome.
Well, we're stoked to have you. I guess we'll both just jump straight into it. Can you tell us a little bit about Coast H.A.N.D.S, what you guys do for the Central Coast community?
Of course. So we started an organisation called Coast H.A.N.D.S about a year and a half ago because we noticed that there was a need for a little bit more help with the homeless situation that we have on the Central Coast and also up through Sydney and Newcastle regions. And then we also were basically notified that there was a big need for things like frozen meals and support for local community. So we're talking about people who may have jobs, who may have housing, but because of the problems that we had with COVID, a lot of these people are either losing jobs, losing hours, losing money and struggling financially. So they were having dramas putting food on the table. So basically what we're trying to do is not only supply food and clothing for people who may be homeless, but also for people who, like I said, do have homes and do have jobs but are struggling with food security and financial security.
And during COVID, have you noticed, a pretty big peak in demand for these kind of services?
To be honest with you, the peak sort of came as COVID started to go away. So generally, during the peak of COVID, our government acted and they took the homeless off the streets and they actually put them up into accommodation. So these guys were then fed, they had somewhere to stay, they had access to electricity, showers, the whole lot. But once COVID started going away, all of those things were taken away again. So we saw a lot of people ended up back out on the street. And the same goes for the rental situation. So the government put a moratorium on kicking people out and basically said, look, you can't do that. But that's sort of come to an end. So we are finding people who may not be getting kicked out, but they're struggling to pay the rent. They're putting all their money towards rent. So they're not getting food or they're not being able to afford food, proper food. So basically we supply a service that goes out to our local area, San Remo Neighbourhood Centre, Toukley Neighbourhood Centre, Wyong Neighbourhood Centre, the Entrance Hub, and South Lakes Incorporated, which is a food bank service, and they actually deliver straight to people in need.
So you've got a database or a list of people in need that are really relying on your services?
Yeah, pretty much. We certainly do. We've sort of linked up with other organisations and other community-minded organisations that are already out there doing the right thing and provided them with another service to try and help what they're doing.
So it's really a collaborative community effort on the coast.
Mate, the coast is fantastic for collaborations. We've got about 5 or 6 different charity groups that we work with here on the Central Coast, ranging from, you've got guys like Central Coast Disaster Relief, for argument's sake, who focus a lot on bushfires and floods and that sort of thing, but they also do other work as well. And then you've got the other side of things. You've got guys like Shoebox Revolution. They put together little shoeboxes full of everything that people may need if they're struggling. So soaps, toilet,
personal gear,
sanitary items, yeah, all that sort of stuff. So, mate, the coast is fantastic. I think maybe it's because the coast is so spread that people are so keen to get involved and come together and help. So, yeah, the coast is great.
It really is. It is a special part of the world and it's got such a good community feel, which is kind of the whole reason to have this podcast. I guess it's also a matter of people knowing that these services are out there. And what sort of method are you doing to, make sure that everyone knows that this support is available on the coast?
So we use methods like, I guess, Facebook, social media. I'm not a huge fan of social media, but for this sort of thing, it's fantastic. People like to be able to see where their donations are going. If they're throwing money at something, if they're throwing clothing or items at something, they want to see where it's going. So rather than putting it in a shop and trying to sell it, and we just take it straight to the street. So we employ means like live videos, pictures, that sort of stuff. We throw it straight up on the page. People know exactly where their stuff's going and they're quite happy to continue to donate knowing that.
Perfect. Well, there's a whole page on the Proud to be a Coastie website about Coast H.A.N.D.S, all the businesses that they work closely with. So if you do want to jump on and have a look there, there's going to be a link to donate as well, and as well in the show notes of the podcast. So we've been talking about, obviously donating food, donating goods such as, personal items, blankets, anything that you really need in your day to day. Is there anything else in addition that people are needing?
The biggest problem that we face is men's clothing. I'm a male myself, and I will wear my clothes till they fall off my back. And I think a lot of blokes are in the same department. Unfortunately, when you hit the streets, you'll find that you've probably got a 70-30 percentage-wise in favour of the male. So we don't have enough clothing coming in for men, considering how much that we're giving out for men. So that's a big area that we need to address, and we need to try and figure out ways to try and corner that market and get blokes interested and get them to bring their stuff in. Like, come on, guys, you're probably wearing the same shirts that your wife washes week in, week out, because they're the ones on the top of the pile. So give me the bottom of the pile. Let me get it out to people who need it.
And if you were to collect them, is there any collection points around the coast?
We have, we do collection points we've got a storage shed that was donated by the guys called That Big Self-Storage Place in North Wyong. They're actually on Amy Close. So if people just keep an eye on the Facebook page, we do put it up periodically. There'll be a donation time at such and such a place. Come down, donate your stuff down there. We also are in talks with a couple of other people to do some donation drives. And we're going to make them fun. We're going to make them interesting. We have to get the guys down there. So we have to do something that's going to get guys interested. So stay tuned. We will have some really cool donation drives coming up to get the blokes off the lounge chair and down there to give us some clothes.
Perfect. And we'll definitely be posting on the Proud to be a Coastie socials as well to just try drum up as much support as possible. So that's, I guess, the food and, that's, I guess, the resources in terms of like clothing, as well as, food. Everyone needs to eat. It's a resource that we all need in life. So there's no doubt a lot of preparation goes into, getting the food needed, getting the fruit, the vegetables, the meat, everything you need to then go to a commercial kitchen to then produce the food and roll it out. Where do your resources come from?
So we've got some fantastic local businesses up here on the coast, and they've supported us since day dot. So we've got Farm Fresh to You. Now these guys are a local, I guess you could call them a grocer. They go down to Sydney, they get all their produce directly from the farmers markets, and then they bring it straight back up here to the coasties and put it into boxes and take it out to the coasties. We've got Singo's Meats, which is down in Gosford. They're another local business that they're fantastic. Like, they basically just donate their meat straight to us. We've asked them for a set amount, so they donate that to us without a problem in the world. We've got Faith in Action Ministries, Abe at FIAM, they call it, sorry. He donates sauces, pastas, rices, all that sort of stuff. We've got some local organisations that donate containers. So look, like I've said at the outset, everything that we do, everything that we get is done by donation. Absolutely everything. So we give everything back to the community for free because that's how we got it in the first place.
Perfect. It's, just an amazing thing that you guys are doing. So in terms of how many meals are you making on a weekly basis?
We started with the idea that we could do maybe 50 a week, and we just sort of see how we went from there. That was a pretty realistic approach, but didn't happen. We ended up doing, well, put it this way, we just finished doing a big drive with Dish Restaurant, and they just made 350 meals for us. So to date, over 4.5 months, we are sitting at 2,051 meals. So that's almost 500 a month that we've managed to get out in the community.
Wow. Oh, well, we've definitely got some full bellies out there, that's for sure. So what if other local businesses are keen to get involved? How would they do that, or what sort of stuff are you needing?
Look, we're always looking for restaurants that would be happy to cook. It's, as you can understand, it takes a lot of prep for these guys to make these meals for us. So they're sacrificing their own time. You've got chefs that are coming in on their days off to cook and prep and make these meals for us. And then there's also the supply. The supply that we get is fantastic, but it's often offset by individual supply that we get from just community members. So people might send us a message and say, hey, look, we've seen what you're doing. We'd love to help. I just went down the shops and I bought 5 bags of pasta and 6 cans of sauce or something. That's fantastic. That's so helpful. So if businesses want to donate that sort of stuff to us, that would be absolutely fantastic. If they're a business that works in the food industry and they want to donate time, they want to donate a kitchen that people can cook in, obviously we need to be really careful that we stay under the requirements, the health and safety requirements, to make sure that everything that we're getting out there isn't making people sick or causing any issue. So that's something we have to be really careful about. So yeah, if businesses are in the food industry and they want to donate their time and cook for us, we won't say no. That's fantastic.
Perfect. All right. So businesses can get involved by donating their time cooking. If they've got produce as well, then definitely get in touch so you can, turn that produce into beautiful food that you can distribute to the community. Is there like a regular distribution schedule? Like you go to the different community centres, is it like, once a week you're distributing these meals and maybe people are chucking them in the freezer at home, or are they kind of like ready to go, ready to eat?
We try and deliver them frozen. The reason behind that is obviously if we've got to drive from here to the entrance, for argument's sake, it might be a 15-20 minute journey. And the last thing we want is food to start going warm. So we deliver everything frozen. And generally, it's every week. So every week we're going out to these different community centres, these neighbourhood centres, and giving them a set amount of meals every week, depending on what their need is. Mm-hmm. And people can just go straight to these community centres. If they're starving, if they're hungry, just go and knock on the door, and these guys can throw one straight into the microwave and heat up a nice, fresh, restaurant-quality meal, nice, nutritious feed for them.
Oh, that's awesome. I guess there's also other challenges, that comes with, helping and, supporting the vulnerable in our community. Is there any other issues that have been, arisen, that you also have to deal with? Obviously, access to, general needs, shower, food, shelter is one of them. But do we have much support in, the mental health sector or for people who are suffering from drug abuse? So
that's a big issue, and it's a little bit of a difficult issue sometimes, depending on the situation that these people are in. So obviously each person has a different situation. You do have people that might come from institutionalised abuse or violence or that sort of thing. So for them, it's difficult to go and reach out to, like a government organisation or something like that to get some sort of help, because they've been in situations where they've been hurt in those sort of environments. So it's a bit scary for them. It's a bit difficult. I'm very happy to say that we've had a number of local people who have contacted us who work in those fields, and they've actually offered their services for free. So if we come upon someone who is suffering a mental illness or is having a bad time or needs some sort of support, basically we now have the opportunity to bring down one of these people, and they can talk to them in a setting where they're comfortable, on the side of the road, in the park, at Kibble Park where we do our outreach service, somewhere where they feel comfortable, that they're not boxed in somewhere, they're not in a room. That's the best way to do it sometimes. So yeah, we're really thankful that we've got such support from our local community members.
It really is like a team effort. with all of the, you know, businesses that and organisations that you're working with closely. So who are you really dealing with on, you know, a week-to-week basis on the coast?
So we've got regulars. We do have people that live in housing or refuges or whatnot. We do have people who live on the street. They're the people that we deal with on a regular basis. But then we also have, look, even children. We have children who turn up to the neighbourhood centres who haven't been fed properly. Now, that's not necessarily a parent doing something silly and spending money on alcohol or drugs or something else. It could just be that they've had to use all their money on rent and they can't afford to buy anything else. So a lot of these kids are coming straight down to the community centre for a feed. So it's fantastic that we're able to put these meals into the community centres and they can look after them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, even like the rent price in COVID, you'd think that it would decrease, but it's actually increased. Like to rent a house on the coast, it's just getting more and more expensive. And have you noticed that that's been like shifting any movement around of where people are having to live in?
Look, people who are desperate often enough will use public transport. So we sort of got involved in this area of the coast because some of the other areas that were supplying meals were telling us we've got people who are jumping on a bus, catching 2 or 3 buses from, you know, Wyong or San Remo and going all the way out to the entrance to try and get some food. So they're using whatever valuable money they do have to jump on the public transport. And yeah, that was sort of unacceptable. So we figured, you know, we need to set something up here. Look, I know recently we've had up to 50 people lining up to look at a rental. So the situation's pretty dire. And being in the real estate, you know, yourself, you'd probably be well aware, you'd probably have lists of people who are looking at properties. I don't think a specific area is going to be that much different to any other areas at the moment, just because of the you know, coming down off the COVID and everything else that's happening. But yeah, look, we just sort of looked at this area because we could see people coming out of here and going further afield to get help. So we figured, hey, this is the area that we live in, so be as good a place as any to set up.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, you know, there is a bit of a preconception about the homeless, and I just would really like to touch on that so we can debunk these myths, because a lot of the time people just have this perception that, you know, they're in this situation or they're homeless and it's their fault. And I'm sure that you can contest and have so many real life examples of that's not always the case. That, you know, there's other paths to I don't know, I guess ending up in this situation. Like it's not always, you know what I mean? Like I just want to really like touch on that so we can try to really get to the bottom of it and I guess stop stigmatizing people.
Mate, I'm really glad that you've raised that because it's an extremely important issue and it's an extremely important side to this story. On a personal note, I've been homeless myself. So look, I own my own property at the moment. I've got a good job. I've got a family. We're paying our mortgage. We're reasonably comfortable. But the truth of the matter is that I was homeless. And that didn't come about because I was, you know, taking drugs or drinking alcohol or being an idiot. Basically, I lost my job. I was only young. I was only about 18 at the time. I didn't have a very good family support network. So I sort of struggled. I jumped from couch to couch at my mates' places, and then eventually I ran out of couches to sleep on. So I ended up on the street. Nowadays, a lot of the people that I speak to, there's a whole range of different reasons why people end up on the street. And it's really sad that people seem to associate homelessness with drugs and alcohol, because a lot of the time it's got nothing to do with it. There is no link between those two and the reason why some of these guys get up on the street. I've got people in Woolloomooloo who I regularly go and see. One in particular lost his entire family in a house fire. Now that bloke, he just can't function as a part of society anymore. He's lost everything that he cared about. He's ended up on the street because he can't get his head around the personal losses that he had to go through. Why is that bloke any less deserving of our time and attention and our, looking after him with food and clothing and whatnot, simply because he's homeless and he's on the street? Mate, that's not the way society should function, as far as I'm concerned. You can't make these judgments based on the way a person looks or where they are. So, look, I'm really, like I said, thankful that you raised this issue, because it's really, really important for people to understand that a lot of these guys aren't there because of drugs and alcohol. They're there because of situations that have happened that I think it's a lot easier for people to realise now that we've all been through this COVID. We've got people who've lost businesses. We've got people who've lost jobs. These are good people, but they've just had a number of different things line up against them, and bang, suddenly they don't have a wage to bring in. Suddenly they might not have a house anymore. So I think it's really important that people pay attention to that these guys are not necessarily homeless because of drugs and alcohol. There's a whole heap of different reasons.
And some of the most vulnerable people in our community are also the elderly. So I remember, it was a couple of years ago, I was just down in Gosford with some friends going for a walk on the foreshore, and underneath the Brian McGowan Bridge was just like this homeless lady. So, we noticed her, so we popped to the shops to grab some food and came back down and just talked to her and just had a conversation. And her story was just mind-blowing, because you have this, you're like, I don't understand. Like, for someone who's never been homeless before, sometimes you can't even understand how you get into that situation before, because you've probably never had to deal with all of this stuff when maybe you've had just a really nice run in life and things have worked out for you, and that's awesome. But other people have had, a hard time, and just being able to listen to some stories like, she was not, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing. It was a family situation, not having that income to support where she lives, and having some family dramas and people like cutting them out of their lives. So I don't know, I really encourage people to have a conversation with people where possible, and, just not have your back up, Let's take people on face value, have a conversation with them. Don't judge a book by its cover.
100%. Yeah, fully agree.
Well, that was kind of covered up a lot of the questions, that I had on my end. Is there anything else that, you think is pretty important to chat about or discuss or anything like that, or you want to highlight?
I'd like to highlight shopping local and supporting local businesses. I'm sure we've touched on that, but look, that's really, really important. The businesses that supply us, the businesses that support us, are all local businesses. A lot of these guys are doing it tough, but they're still finding ways to support us. So they're still giving us their blokes to work and cook for us. They're still supplying, whether it be meat or veggies or whatnot. Go to these local restaurants. Please go to these local restaurants. We have about 8 local restaurants dotted all over the Central Coast here that you can go and see. We've got Johnny Tapas, When in Rome, Radshahi Indian Restaurant. We've got the Olive Tree Brasserie straight above the pub at Toukley. 350 Bar and Kitchen. We've got the Dish Restaurant. So you've got Dish at Wallara Bay, you've got Dish at Nora Head. Zero Fox Pasta. We've got Apricot Cafe. Look, there's heaps and heaps and heaps of restaurants that are supporting us. Fantastic local restaurants. Every time you go in there and you buy a meal, you're helping to buy a meal for someone who's on the street or someone who's in need. What better way to give back to your community? If you're a struggling family and the only time you get a break or the only thing you can afford is one meal out a week, that's your family's out time. Like, that's your family's party time. You know what I mean? Well, go and jump on one of these restaurants, because not only are you going to go out and you're going to have a great feed, you're going to enjoy yourselves, you guys have a good time, but you're backing our community up and you're supporting these people who need help. So I really can't stress enough how important it is to support your local businesses.
And that is essentially what makes us proud to be a coastie and proud to live here is the community support, you know, shopping local, supporting local restaurants and businesses. And we're going to have a full list of all these restaurants and local businesses in the show notes of the podcast too, if you wanted to go check them out. I guess just to wrap this up, what does Coast H.A.N.D.S stand for? So everyone thinks hand, is it helping a hand, or what is
It's actually an acronym for Helping Australians Through Natural Disaster with Shelter. So basically, we're just looking at any issue that might cause people problems. So, you know, we have dealt with floods and we've dealt with fires in the last couple of months, unfortunately. But obviously homelessness and lack of shelter is a big one as well. And again, we're not just talking about people who are homeless. We're also talking about women, families who may be escaping domestic violence, okay? They fall under that lack of shelter sort of thing because they need somewhere to go, they need some support. So once they come out of a shelter, again, we supply clothing, stuff for the kids, whatever they may need.
Awesome. Well, you can check them out. They're all in our show notes. Thank you so much, Michael Weeks, for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you very much. Pleased to be here. You guys are champions.
Cheers.